The courtroom is electric. Voices clash, papers shuffle, and tension hangs thick in the air. A driver, red-faced and fuming, lashes out at the interpreter, blaming confusion, blaming the system. Whispers ripple through the room as Judge Caprio leans forward, calm and unshakable, his eyes scanning the scene like a hawk. Who's responsible when words fail? The question hangs in the air. The driver's arrogance meets its first real challenge, an authority that doesn't yell, doesn't scold, but exposes the truth with quiet force. Every eye is fixed, every heartbeat racing. What happens when pride confronts fairness? And how far will Judge Caprio go to reveal not just the law, but the character of the man before him? The courtroom doors slammed open, echoing down the polished marble, and he stormed in, a man whose presence alone seemed to vibrate through the room. The driver's shoulders were tight, jaw clenched, eyes darting impatiently as he muttered under his breath. Each step was heavy, deliberate, his frustration palpable. He planted himself in front of the bench, chest heaving, hands gesturing wildly toward the interpreter. The voice that followed was sharp, cutting through the quiet like a whip. "I told him exactly what I meant. He's twisting my words." Whispers spread like wildfire across the courtroom. Spectators leaned forward, drawn to the clash, sensing the raw tension before a single word of judgment was spoken. The interpreter's lips trembled, trying desperately to translate not just language but the fire burning in his client's chest. Every pause, every misstep in translation seemed to stoke the driver's irritation, until it became a storm rolling across the courtroom floor. Judge Caprio sat unmoved, calm, authoritative. Eyes steady, hands folded neatly atop the bench, he allowed the chaos to reach its peak before speaking. "Sir," he said, voice quiet yet carrying every ounce of command the room could hold, "let's take a step back." The driver's head snapped up, disbelief flashing in his eyes. "Step back. You don't understand what he's saying," he barked. His words collided with murmurs from the audience, each person feeling the imbalance, the sheer force of arrogance meeting unshakable authority. A subtle crack appeared. The driver's gestures slowed, hesitation creeping into his tone. Caprio's questions were precise, calm, slicing through the bravado. "What exactly happened that day?" The words were simple, but the effect was seismic. The interpreter's voice trembled as he translated, carrying not just facts, but the weight of accountability. The room leaned in, collectively holding its breath. Every accusation, every defensive reply, made the driver's anger more transparent, more human. A pause, brief, tense, hung in the air. The audience sensed a pivot, a shift from aggression to reflection. Eyes flicked from the driver's clenched fists to the subtle nods of understanding from the courtroom. Caprio's calm intensity pressed forward, revealing what raw frustration often masks: a lack of consideration, a disregard for others' perspectives. The driver's chest rose and fell in silent acknowledgement, tiny cracks forming in the armor of rage. "Have you ever been misunderstood? How would you react if your words were twisted, your frustration magnified for all to see?" That question lingered as the courtroom exhaled collectively. Murmurs softened, tension thinned, but the lesson was just beginning. Even in the heat of anger, authority and patience exposed the deeper truth, and the seeds of accountability were now sown, ready to grow in the chapters to come. The courtroom hung in suspense, every eye fixed on the driver. His voice rose again, sharper this time, echoing against the high ceilings. "I told him exactly what happened. He's twisting my words." The interpreter's hands shook slightly as he relayed the message, carefully choosing each word to preserve meaning without inflaming the storm. Each translation carried the weight of the driver's temper, but also, slowly, the cracks in his composure. Whispers spread among the spectators. A clerk's pen paused mid-note. A security officer's eyes flickered toward the interpreter, silently acknowledging the impossible task of translating fury without adding fuel. The driver's chest heaved, nostrils flaring, frustration radiating in waves. "Do you even understand?" he snapped, pointing accusingly. The audience flinched at the intensity. Judge Caprio's gaze remained unwavering. Calm, steady, almost imperceptibly leaning forward, he allowed the room to feel the tension before speaking. "Sir," he said, voice measured, almost soft, "can you clarify what you said to him?" "Step by step." The driver's arrogance faltered, eyes widening in surprise. I told him. I mean," he stumbled over his own words, anger now tangled with uncertainty. Gasps rippled across the room as contradictions surfaced. The interpreter, precise but strained, delivered each carefully chosen word, revealing the gaps between the driver's claims and reality. "He says he gave the full story," the interpreter translated, "but there are inconsistencies." Murmurs grew. The audience sensed the shift. What had started as simple frustration now carried the weight of entitlement and arrogance, laid bare under Caprio's calm scrutiny. A subtle pause filled the courtroom. The driver's fingers clenched the edge of the table. His face flushed red, then pale, a humanizing crack in the armor of rage. Caprio's tone remained steady, gentle, yet sharp. "Anger is one thing, sir, but responsibility is another. Are you speaking to be heard, or merely to be right?" Every word cut deeper than any shout could. Eyes darted between the driver and the interpreter, between chaos and authority. The audience felt empathy for the interpreter's burden, disbelief at the driver's escalating aggression, and admiration for Caprio's mastery of patience as power. The emotional pendulum swung rapidly. Shock, tension, hesitation, reflection. Would you have lost your temper in this situation? Could you have spoken calmly while under fire, or would anger have claimed you too? That question lingered in the courtroom's charged silence, inviting every viewer to judge not just the words, but the character behind them. As the driver braced for the next challenge, the courtroom and the audience waited, breath held, for the next revelation of truth. The courtroom held its breath. Judge Caprio's eyes, calm and unyielding, scanned the driver with measured patience. "Tell me again," he began softly, voice carrying authority without force. "What happened at the intersection?" The driver shifted, fingers drumming on the table, jaw tight, a faint tremor betraying his earlier arrogance. I stopped," he muttered, voice shaky, eyes darting away. A subtle murmur swept through the audience, barely audible but telling. The interpreter, steady and precise, translated each hesitant word, preserving the tension like a tightrope stretched across the room. Gasps punctuated the pauses, reactions bouncing between disbelief and anticipation. Even the courtroom staff exchanged glances, recognizing the cracks forming in the driver's confident facade. Caprio leaned forward, slow, deliberate. "And the signal?" he asked. "Was it red? Or did it change as you approached?" The driver's brow furrowed, hesitation stretching seconds into an eternity. It was yellow, I think," he said, voice trailing off. A whisper of laughter escaped from the back row, soft, nervous, as if the room itself sensed the unraveling. The interpreter became a silent anchor. Steady hands, calm delivery, translating tension without adding drama. The audience, drawn into the rhythm, felt the emotional roller coaster, power shifting, arrogance waning, integrity standing firm. A clerk exhaled quietly, the sound amplified in the silence, reminding everyone how fragile authority can appear when truth is challenged. Caprio's questions were gentle yet devastating, each one a probe into character rather than accusation. "Do you understand why your version seems inconsistent?" he asked, soft but piercing. The driver swallowed hard, blinking rapidly. I suppose," he admitted, voice low. A hush fell. Whispers faded as the room collectively felt the weight of moral exposure. Pause and consider. How would you stay calm under scrutiny? Could you face careful, relentless questioning without letting panic take over, or would pressure erode your confidence as it did here? Every glance, every pause, every measured word built toward a moment of undeniable truth, reminding viewers that composure in the face of moral authority is often more powerful than rage. The cracks were no longer subtle, they were the hinge on which the driver's fate would swing, and the audience waited, riveted, for the next revelation. The courtroom fell into an almost sacred silence. Judge Caprio's eyes, steady and unblinking, fixed on the driver. "Do you believe you treated others with fairness that day?" His voice was calm, deliberate, yet every word carried weight, pressing gently against the driver's armor of arrogance. The man shifted uncomfortably, shoulders tensing, hands gripping the table as if trying to anchor himself. I thought I did," he stammered, voice tight, eyes flicking toward the interpreter. The interpreter, calm and composed, met his gaze without flinching, translating each hesitant word faithfully, conveying not just meaning but moral gravity. A ripple of murmurs passed through the audience, subtle but telling. Gasps followed small pauses, the courtroom collectively feeling the shift from accusation to reflection. Caprio leaned forward slightly, voice soft but piercing. And respect. Did you show respect for those who depended on your care? For those who had no voice in your decisions? The driver's jaw clenched, a bead of sweat forming at his temple. He opened his mouth, then paused, hesitation and realization mingling. I suppose I could have. The words barely escaped, but they carried the weight of humility, of pride meeting quiet, unrelenting wisdom. Every eye tracked the subtle transformation. Arrogance softened, defensiveness faltered. The interpreter, once the target of frustration, now embodied patience and clarity, the quiet anchor grounding the courtroom in truth. Caprio's calm authority made power irrelevant. It was replaced by introspection, by the moral mirror he held before the driver. The audience felt the tension shift, from anticipation to empathy. Every small admission became a revelation, every faltering gesture a story of accountability. The room leaned in, collective breath held, watching human pride collide with gentle, unyielding moral pressure. The courtroom itself seemed to exhale, allowing space for reflection, for recognition of responsibility beyond mere rules or technicalities. Could you face your flaws like this? Could you confront the ways your actions impact others when held to a higher standard, without hiding behind excuses or anger? The driver's eyes lowered, chest rising and falling, the first glimpses of understanding softening the edge of his earlier hostility. The moral stakes were laid bare, leaving the audience not just witnessing a trial, but a reflection on character, integrity, and the quiet power of accountability. The courtroom shifted as documents were placed on the bench, tickets, statements, official forms, each one crisp and unyielding. Caprio's calm hands moved deliberately, stacking papers like a measured heartbeat in a room charged with tension. The driver's posture stiffened, chest rising and falling rapidly, eyes darting nervously to each new piece of evidence. These records, Caprio began, voice steady, paint a story that does not entirely align with your account. Can you explain? A soft gasp floated through the audience. The interpreter, steady as ever, translated each word with precision, carrying not just facts but the emotional undercurrent that the driver's words had long tried to obscure. Murmurs spread, subtle chuckles, whispered incredulity, the courtroom sensing a shift in power. Confidence faltered, arrogance trembling at the edges of exposure. Caprio's eyes scanned the driver calmly, deliberately, as if each gaze alone could pierce denial. This ticket, dated the same day, indicates a different timeline. The statement from the officer notes actions you have yet to acknowledge. How do you reconcile this? The driver's hands gripped the table, knuckles white, jaw tightening as he attempted a reply. I don't, well, I mean, his voice wavered, words failing to cover the cracks in his story. The courtroom exhaled collectively. Every spectator leaned forward, sensing the drama unfold in real time. The subtle tension, the collision of arrogance and undeniable fact, was palpable. The interpreter's role, once a target of aggression, now became the quiet anchor of clarity, vindicated without a word beyond the faithful translation of reality. Even the officers exchanged glances, impressed by the subtle moral authority in Caprio's calm unmasking of inconsistencies. Evidence after evidence revealed gaps the driver could not argue away. A ticket he claimed never existed, a witness statement contradicting his recollection, documents that refused to bend under arrogance. Gasps punctuated every reveal, murmurs rippled, the audience viscerally aware of the widening chasm between his defiance and the courtroom's patient insistence on truth. The driver leaned back, eyes darting, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through the veil of pride. Comment if you've ever been confronted with undeniable truth, felt your confidence shaken, forced to face facts you cannot twist or ignore. Caprio's measured approach transformed the evidence into more than documents. It became a mirror reflecting character, morality, and responsibility. The driver's next move hung in the balance, each heartbeat in the courtroom amplified for viewers. Would he accept accountability, or cling to denial as the room silently demanded honesty? Every glance, every pause, every subtle gesture drove the tension higher, leaving the audience perched on the edge, waiting for the inevitable reckoning. The courtroom air shifted, heavy with anticipation. The driver's hands, once clenched tightly on the table, relaxed slightly, fingers brushing against the polished wood. His chest rose and fell unevenly, the first sign that Caprio's measured calm had begun to pierce the armor of pride. Do you understand the impact of your decisions? Caprio asked softly, voice steady, eyes unwavering. The question hung in the air, each syllable carrying weight far greater than any shout could convey. The driver swallowed hard, throat dry. I didn't realize. I see now." His voice faltered, a mixture of shame and dawning comprehension. Murmurs spread through the courtroom, subtle but telling, as audience members exchanged knowing glances. Even the officers leaned forward, sensing the shift from confrontation to reflection, from anger to remorse. The interpreter, calm as ever, translated each hesitant word with precision, embodying patience and clarity. Every movement, every small gesture, the driver's lowered eyes, the quiver in his voice, the slackening of rigid shoulders, told a story louder than any argument. Gasps punctuated the silence as the audience watched a man begin to confront the reality of his actions. Caprio's eyes softened slightly, yet the authority never wavered. "Acknowledging a mistake is difficult," he said, quiet but piercing. "But recognizing it is the first step toward responsibility. Do you see that now?" The driver's head dipped, almost imperceptibly, and a tight nod followed. The room exhaled, whispers fading as the tension transformed from challenge to contemplation. Every glance between the driver and interpreter became charged with subtle emotion, the unspoken acknowledgment of patience, integrity, and the slow erosion of defensiveness. The audience was captivated, feeling the delicate balance between authority and humility, watching as pride gave way to self-awareness. Small signs of remorse, a hesitant voice, a slight frown, a pause that conveyed more than words, spoke volumes. When have you realized too late you were wrong? Could you face the weight of your actions without retreating into anger or excuses? The courtroom held its collective breath as the turning point solidified, the driver teetering on the edge of accountability. The stage was set, the emotional stakes at their peak, leaving viewers riveted, sensing that the final judgment and the resolution of this moral journey was just beyond reach. The courtroom held its collective breath, the silence thick enough to feel. Judge Caprio's hands rested lightly on the bench, eyes steady, radiating a calm authority that seemed to slow time itself. "After hearing all accounts, reviewing the evidence, and observing your conduct," he began, voice measured but firm, "it is clear that responsibility must be acknowledged, but so too must the capacity for understanding." The driver's shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on the floor, chest heaving as shame and relief collided. A faint tremor ran through his hands. I understand," he whispered, voice cracking, almost inaudible above the courtroom's quiet tension. Gasps and soft murmurs rippled through the spectators, each person sensing the profound shift unfolding before them. Even the officers and clerks leaned in, silent witnesses to the delicate balance of power and compassion. Caprio's gaze moved slowly across the room, landing briefly on the interpreter. The man's calm professionalism, unwavering in the face of anger and chaos, was acknowledged not with words but a subtle nod. The interpreter's eyes met Caprio's, conveying quiet triumph and the dignity of patience. In that moment, the audience understood, integrity often speaks louder than confrontation. "Justice," Caprio continued, voice steady, deliberate, "is not merely punishment. It is guidance, accountability tempered with humanity. You are expected to recognize your errors, to learn from them, and to treat others with respect moving forward." The driver's hands unclenched fully now, fingers trembling. He nodded, the weight of comprehension settling over him. Relief softened his features, humility breaking through the shadow of pride. The courtroom exhaled, the tension finally dissipating. Every subtle movement, the driver's lowered gaze, the slight straightening of his back, the interpreter's composed presence, created a cinematic tableau of moral clarity. The audience felt the gravity of the moment, a man confronted with truth, a judge wielding authority not as intimidation, but as a lesson in character and consequence. Would you have handled it with the same grace? Could you balance accountability with compassion, exposing wrongdoing without extinguishing dignity? The courtroom's rare stillness emphasized that justice need not be harsh to be effective. Caprio's verdict was more than a ruling, it was a reflection on human nature, a masterclass in the power of patience, understanding, and moral authority. Every viewer left the scene, absorbed in the profound lesson. True justice is measured not just in law, but in the balance of integrity, empathy, and the courage to face one's own failings. The last echoes of footsteps faded as the courtroom began to empty, chairs scraping softly against the polished floor. Judge Caprio remained for a moment, hands folded lightly on the bench, eyes sweeping the room with measured calm. A faint, almost imperceptible smile curved his lips, a quiet acknowledgment of a lesson taught, a balance struck between accountability and compassion. The tension that had gripped the room for hours lingered in the air, a reminder of the moral weight carried in every glance, every word, every pause. The driver rose slowly, shoulders squared yet visibly altered. His eyes, once sharp with defiance, now carried reflection, a mixture of humility and lingering shame. Each step toward the exit seemed deliberate, a silent testimony to the transformation forced by exposure to both authority and quiet understanding. Murmurs followed his departure, subtle echoes of empathy and astonishment weaving through the remaining audience members. The interpreter moved with quiet dignity, gathering papers and belongings with the same calm professionalism that had carried him through the storm. His eyes, steady and composed, met the driver's only briefly, conveying no triumph, only the quiet strength of patience and integrity. The courtroom staff and officers exchanged small nods, recognizing the rare grace that had guided the entire proceeding, the invisible force that had turned confrontation into moral reflection. Caprio lingered, watching the emptying room, the silence punctuated only by distant shuffles and the occasional whisper. The moral clarity of the day, the human lessons carved into each interaction, remained palpable. He straightened slightly, the faint smile lingering, a subtle signal to viewers that justice had been served, not merely in law, but in character and conscience. What does it truly mean to face consequences? Could you have walked away with the same humility, the same willingness to confront your mistakes? The audience, now alone with their reflections, felt the weight of the courtroom's lessons, that power tempered by compassion teaches more than punishment ever could, and that human flaws revealed under pressure offer the clearest glimpse into character. As the final echoes of movement faded, the scene held its cinematic stillness. Arrogance had been tempered, integrity recognized, and a quiet moral resolution lingered in the room, leaving viewers satisfied yet contemplative. Every glance, every subtle gesture, every unspoken lesson reinforced the timeless allure of courtroom storytelling, where justice tests humanity and character is revealed under pressure. What would you have done differently?